Good evening to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our Hurricane Tropical Weather Outlook for today, Thursday, May 30th, 2024. Starting off with the NHC homepage to see what's going on over the next 7 days in the Atlantic. Nothing much happening, but it is a different story now. In the Eastern Pacific, there's an area of interest off the coast of Mexico with a low chance over the next 48 hours and 7 days. I'll show you in just a moment that the model support is kind of iffy on this. Some models form it, some models don't, but either way, it is a disorganized area just south of Central America and Mexico, and only low chances of development expected right now. You can see on the satellite, not much besides that going on. We still have a lot of these strong upper level westerly winds. Lots of convection blowing up over Texas. I believe there's severe weather tonight, as continued from the past several weeks of very active weather we've had over the southern and central United States. And then finally, you can see where our area of interest is. I do believe it is actually associated with the first tropical wave that did come through the Caribbean and kind of ended up in this vicinity several days ago, but now it's traversed into the eastern Pacific, I guess, and now it's producing an area of cloud cover, which does seem like it does have a chance to develop. You could actually see it on satellite here, roughly just south of Central America, as the NHC noted, very disorganized in convective in its sort of convective mass. But we did talk about this kind of being a part of a more favorable pattern that would begin to take place in the general Western Hemisphere, and this is once again reflected by just taking a look at the graph that I show you here. This is the velocity potential. Basically, if you don't know what the graph really means, the orange is more sinking, suppressed air in the upper atmosphere, while this green and this blue represents rising air in the atmosphere. And what we really want to look for is a bunch of these greens and blues starting to happen over the Western Hemisphere, and it does, especially as we head towards mid-June. But even in the first part of June, we start to see these small waves, probably convectively coupled Kelvin waves, or CCKWs. Basically, if we like to think about them, small pockets of rising air that sometimes, if they come over the right area at the right time, if they move over an area at the right time, it could help fertilize that area of showers and thunderstorms to potentially go on and develop. And it does seem like maybe we'll have a little bit of that action over the next several days, especially talking about the eastern Pacific. You could see some of these greens probably represents more rising air, but then you see that that also becomes more substantial in the western hemisphere, not only in the Pacific but in the Atlantic too, and over Africa as well, over the next several weeks as we head into June. And with that being said, it just goes to show that the signs are there that the Pacific, not only the Pacific, but I should also especially mention for Atlantic interests as well, things are slowly coming together. The atmosphere is slowly coming into place. And believe me, in a few weeks in June, once we start getting this substantial rising air over us in the Atlantic, we will start to see things coming to life. And I do believe, as little as this small area may be, it is a sign of things coming to life, in terms of activity in the Western Hemisphere in general, not just the Atlantic. But I did mention it is just a small area of interest, though, because if we take a look at some of the modeling, at least with the GFS from the 18Z run, I'll just move it out to the next 7 days, and there's nothing. You really don't see any sort of development that occurs. We can back this up actually a little bit, and you do see that the GFS does actually reflect this area of vorticity, at least with what it shows in terms of initialization. You do see that there is some sort of vorticity that does try to get going south of Central America, but you could see as we take it out in time, it just fizzles out and doesn't ever become anything too concentrated. This is a different story, though, if we look at another model like the CMC, and this has actually been the model that has been forming this system so far. We take it out to the next 48 to 72 hours. By hour 72, look at that. We have a closed sort of isobar here, and we also have concentrating very potent vorticity. This is what we like to look at when it comes to a developing system. And I'll zoom it out even further up to hour 120. This is what you like to see, probably a very bona fide tropical system at this point, and you could see vorticity concentrating over one small area, a bunch of these closed isobars, meaning that there is a closed low-level center. This is definitely for sure a signature of a developing, or probably already very potent at this point, tropical system that the Canadian model does have, although they do quickly fizzle this out, and by the time we get to the next week or so, the Canadian kind of completely fizzles out with this and barely has much of anything once we get to the 7-day mark. So this will probably be a quick system. At least that's what the Canadian is telling us, that if this does form, it'll be a quick system. And even a model like the Icon 2 does have it, and you can see it also kind of does develop this, and it also shows the low pressure does actually get down to 998 millibars. So that probably means, and you can see either way that there is a small sort of low pressure that kind of does consolidate, at least on the Icon. So that would mean that the Icon is looking at development potentially with this system too, and it'll probably just be a small but probably potent tropical system. And at least in terms of tracks, it does very much stay off the coast of Mexico. But it's even a question on whether or not this will develop, because as I said, the Canadian and the Icon form it, but models like the GFS, which I'll show you really quickly, the GFS does absolutely nothing with it, and I'll even show you the European too. I'll just show you the EC Fast right now. Take it out to hour 72, and this is hour 72 on the European. Compare that to what the CMC has. Not even the Euro is developing this out as well. And people tend to say if the European doesn't form this, then there's probably no formation expected at all. So maybe that's what we're going to have to go with. But either way, the signal is still there just to kind of enforce it on the 850 millibar vorticity map. There is something there to work with. Maybe some of the models are seeing something that others are not. Maybe the European will be wrong this time. It just depends, but at least there is some sort of signal present right now in the current real time. And I'll actually see if this map has updated. Yes, it has. And you can see once again, consolidating vorticity is still very elongated. It's not centralized and kind of into a more circle shape as we would like to look at for a tropical development, but you can definitely see there is still some energy there in the 850 millibar vorticity that the models are showing and are picking up, and some of them are forming this off of Mexico. So that is that when it comes to the Pacific. Other than that, nothing else is going on. But there has been more hurricane season forecasts, at least in the hurricane forecast land. There is actually stuff to talk about today because Tropical Storm Risk TSR from London in the UK. I also almost said United Kingdom. I mean, it is the United Kingdom, whatever. But generally, the bottom line is that more predictions have come out today. TSR has updated their prediction from April, and what do you know? They come out with a prediction more aggressive than their April prediction. I believe all the categories this time around are one more than they showed for April. Now, 24 named storms, 12 hurricanes, and 6 major hurricanes, or they call that intense hurricanes. And the real important part that I like to look at is the ACE index. The average is 122 in a typical season. This year, a whopping 226. And just to remind you, the averages once again for general activity overall, we tend to get 14 storms on average, 7 hurricanes, and 3 majors, and obviously each category is nearly double. Well, the hurricanes is double, but all these other categories, at least with hurricanes and tropical storms, it is generally, you would, as I'm pointing out, generally it is well above normal, and that is expected. That is the kind of expectation that we all have for this season. It is no longer a secret that that is what we expect for this hurricane season. Generally, much above normal expected from all agencies. And the fact that we're coming into the hurricane season just 2 days away now, or roughly a day or two away, depending on how you count time. But the hurricane season is basically on our doorstep, and we have very credible agencies like Tropical Storm Risk putting out forecasts upping and going more aggressive on their forecasts from when they put out several months ago, it definitely shows the confidence that everybody has on this year being very above normal. And really quickly, the other piece I wanted to kind of mention to you, they do actually forecast U.S. hurricanes and U.S. landfall numbers, and even that too is above normal. Their average is around 3.8, maybe 4. I guess you could round that up to 4. They have 5 landfalls this year, and they expect 3 of those to be hurricane landfalls on the United States. The average is roughly around 1.6. Maybe you could kind of round that up to 2. But either way, I don't think it makes a difference. It just generally shows, once again, an above normal season expected overall in the Atlantic. So that is tropical storm risk, but that does not mean that we're not really going to be talking about hurricane season forecasts at all, because I have stuff to kind of talk about and maybe update too, and that is going to happen during day 1 of the hurricane season. This is kind of something I like to put together every single year. 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Saturday, this coming Saturday, June 1st, I'm going to be talking about live about the hurricane season. I'm going to be joined by another friend or so. You may or may not know who they are. If you've been following me for a while, you probably know who it is. But I'm going to be having them on with me. We're going to talk about hurricane season, everything when it comes to hurricane season for 2024. New predictions for the Atlantic, although they probably won't be that different. That's the big hint I'm going to throw at you right now. And I'll also be releasing Eastern Pacific hurricane predictions too, just to kind of give a general idea of what I expect to happen overall across the board in the Atlantic and the Pacific this season, just to give my own thoughts, not really trying to be an actual forecaster. That's a big disclaimer that I really need to throw out there, because sometimes people get a little salty about that. But I just want to give my opinions, and that's what I'm going to do. Day 1, 2024, once again, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So if you're not subscribed, but you want to be on time for this event, definitely subscribe now. Notify yourself, put a notification for 7 p.m. this Saturday. It'll be June 1st. It'll be day 1 of the hurricane season. And we'll have a little celebration, just to kind of kick off the hurricane season on the right track. That's what we're hopefully going to do this Saturday. So join, tune in. Hope to see you there. And yeah, we're gonna have a fun time talking about hurricane season, and also some other relevant stuff as well. Although I assure you they'll all be related to weather. Don't worry about that. But with that being said, though, not much else to go over today. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Maybe not expect an upload tomorrow. My schedule will be pretty tight. But if not, definitely expect an upload on Saturday morning. And of course, I'll once again kind of throw the idea at you for Saturday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Book it in your calendar. Notify yourself. Hope to see you there. And hope to see you in the next update video as well. Good night.